to start with a little, well, I'm Rachel, hello. I've written 4.5 books, if you count novellas. Could I ask, just because it's helpful to know, how many of you here have read a book that I've written? Okay, nice. Okay, no, because I was expecting that, but I just want to make sure I'm like pitching the right vibe. And how many of you are writers? Okay, also good to know. Yeah, no, half counts. If you think it sort of counts, it counts. Okay, yeah, because I wasn't sure if it was going to be largely a reader group or a writer group. But yes, so I am Rachel. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about me when I started writing, the process I've got to writing all of these books and self-publishing them, a bit about my writing and editing process, and I'm actually going to tell you how much money I've made as an author, just because like people don't really talk about it, and I'm self-published, so I may as well. I'm allowed to. I haven't signed any NDAs, but yes. So my name is Rachel. Sandpiper is not my real surname. I found it. It's a wading bird, I think. I think there is a book called Sandpiper, called The Sandpipers. I haven't read it. I probably should. I'm 29 years old. I've self-published 4 full-length books and 1 novella. They're all in the fantasy genre. My books tend to lean a little bit darker, and all of them have a romantic subplot, because I can't not put that in there. So these are the books that I have out. The first book that I ever released was A Pocket of Lies, which was only 18 months ago now. So in June 2024 was when my first book came out. So in the last 18 months, I have published 4 books. I didn't write them all in the last 18 months. I don't write that quickly. I started writing 3 years ago, but I'll get into a little bit more about that in a second. But those are the pictures of my books. I'm sort of putting a brief blurb because I don't actually talk about my books very much in this presentation. So vaguely the vibes are dark adventure books with usually a young heroine aged between 18 and 25, dealing with a lot of traumatic events that happen to her and the characters around her. A Pocket of Lies follows a thief who kind of suffers a humiliating robbery right at the start of the book. And in the course of trying to get her money back, she encounters the people who robbed her and ends up killing one of them at a ball, which leads her on a path of trying to escape the exile that she gets put under for killing someone, and a lot of bad things happen to her, basically. It's just like Suri's bad day, is what someone described it as. This is the Bride of Evenfold duology. So the first book came out 3 months ago yesterday. And this one is also dark fantasy adventure, but this one has dragons in it, so slightly different, I suppose. This one's a little bit more gothic in its vibes, and the world building is a little bit more in-depth and involves, yeah, you've got wolves, you've got dragons, you've got a lot of, you've got like a creepy brotherhood where everyone has white hair, and that's the energy of these books. I'm really bad at talking about my books, can you tell? Okay, so little question is just, romantasy is a very like hot topic right now. I feel like romantasy is just said all the time, but I class my books as romantasy when I'm marketing them, because it's really a valuable tool, because everyone's buying romantasy books these days, like Sarah J. Maas and whatnot. But I don't actually think my books are romantasy, because the romance aspect of my book is sort of 10 to 20% of the overall content of the book. But I think it's interesting because a lot of people, including myself, sometimes talk about my books as romantasy, but they're actually just fantasy books with a romantic subplot. So, the only studying of English I've ever done in a formal environment was A-levels, up to A-level. And I've never done a creative writing course, and I don't have a degree in English. And I've thought about doing a creative writing masters, and then just decided I'd just read more books and try and learn it that way. But I don't actually have any English qualifications beyond English, so it's like a commonly asked question, I think. I studied law at university, hated all of that course. Within the first term, I wanted to quit, but I thought, no, I've got a crippling fear of failure, so I carried on. In my 3rd year of law, I wrote my first full-length book. Terrible. It was like, it's in a drawer, literally. I printed out a physical copy of it, put it in a drawer. It was a young adult dystopian novel. It was themed around angels and demons. That's all we want to say about that one. And then because that book, I was glad to have done it from a bucket list. I've written a book point of view, but I didn't actually, I left that, I put that to the side, thought I've done it, it wasn't good enough. I queried it with like 3 agents and realized it was terrible and just never saw it again. So I spent 5 years working in various different civil service departments. And it wasn't until about 3 years ago that I thought about writing a book again. I was not enjoying my job. Again, this is kind of a theme. Whenever I sort of haven't been enjoying something in my life, I've just turned back to writing. So when I wasn't enjoying my degree, I started writing my first book. When I wasn't enjoying my job, so I worked in the National Crime Agency as an intelligence officer, which sounds a lot cooler than it was. Most of the time, it was a lot of admin, and it was also the department I worked in was very chaotic. So I wasn't enjoying that job, so I started writing A Pocket of Lies in the summer of 2022. And then in autumn, I finished my first draft of A Pocket of Lies. I started self-editing that, got some friends to read it. They told me they thought it was decent. I took that because it's much better than the last one. And then I started thinking about getting it traditionally published. So at this point, I wasn't even thinking about self-publishing. I had heard of it, but that was about the extent. I kind of had heard all the bad things about it. So I wasn't initially thinking about self-publishing, but I queried 50 agents in 2023 between April and September. I had 2 people that were interested, but they both eventually said no. And during that time, I was researching self-publishing, and initially it sounded super daunting because the people that were successful at self-publishing were people that had published a ridiculous number of books. So there's this online community, I don't know if you've heard of it, called it's 20 books to 50K, which the idea behind that is if you've published 20 books, you should be making, at that point, 50K, I think it was a month when he created it, but now it's been changed to be 50K a year. But so 20 books to make the sort of a livable, good salary is what was being touted as like the advice online. So that was really daunting, having written 1 bad book and 1 good book, thinking 20, oh goodness. So initially, didn't really want to go down that path. But the more I looked into it, the more I saw how excited people were about, people really enjoyed like wearing all the hats. Because if you're a self-publisher, you write the books, obviously, yourself, but then you also edit them all. And you get to choose all the cover art yourself. You get to choose who you want to work with. And most importantly, you don't have someone telling you you have to wait 2 years to publish it because you've been pushed back in their order of publishing. And also I was really impatient. I think that was another thing that made me appeal to it, because I thought even if I got a deal in 2023, that it probably wouldn't come out until 2025. And at that point I was writing the second book and raring to go, and just all things seemed to be like, if I wanted the book to come out soon and wanted to get that journey started, that I needed to self-publish. So it was the end of 2023 when I decided that I wanted to self-publish, but that kind of just started a new timeline of thinking about, okay, if I want to self-publish this book, how much work do I realistically need to do in it? Definitely needs 2 more rounds of editing, because it was sort of edited enough to be readable to agents, but it wasn't edited enough to be published by any frame. So I needed a couple more rounds of editing. And I wanted to get a professional editor because it was the first book I was trying to publish and I didn't trust myself. I needed to get a cover. I knew I was going to need to do some marketing work, and I knew that I wanted book 2 to come out fairly close to book 1. So if I could push back, if I delayed how long I published book 1 for, then book 2 would come out sooner than that, and sooner afterwards. So those were all the things in my head. So while I decided in October 2023, the first book didn't come out until 8 months later in June 2024. In March 2024, I quit my job. This wasn't because I thought my books were going to be an instant success. I didn't think that at all. I'd read too much online to know that like 90% of books sell less than 100 copies. So I just didn't like my job. But this did mean that I kind of had no money to, I had like savings that I'd put aside for book stuff. But it also meant that I was like moving back home and like in a whole place of, I had loads of time, which was great. I had no security, which was not great. But I quit my job in March 2024. It's when I started author social medias. It's when I started editing the second book, and I was formatting the first book. And then this was sort of the timeline of Amefyre coming out, which is the first series. So In June 2024, Pocket of Lies came out. In October, so 4 months later, A Promise of Blood came out. And then in May, 7 months after that, A Claiming of Souls came out. This was partly because I'd read something online saying if you try and get a trilogy out within a year, it's like really going to help. And there's so much advice online. I don't know how much of this is true, but I listened to a little bit. So that's what we did, put all 3 books out within a year. And then in September 2025, so 3 months ago, this book, To Touch of Silent Fury, came out, which is not connected to this trilogy, and it's a whole new duology. So that's the timeline of when my books have come out and how long I've been writing for, I suppose. But my process, it takes me about 3 to 5 months to write a first draft. How I get through a first draft is a combination of these factors. So mostly I do writing sprints. I do a lot of time blocking because for a lot of that time, I do now have a part-time job, but for a lot of that time, I didn't have a job. And it turns out not having a job makes it harder to write because you've got the whole day stretching, for me anyway, because I had the whole day stretching ahead of me, thinking, wow, I've got like so much more time to write now. And I found out that it was actually way more helpful to me to give myself a deadline and say, I need to have written this amount of words by this time in the day. Otherwise I didn't get anything done. So I would find a time that worked for me. So I mostly wrote in the afternoons. So I mostly write between sort of 3 and 8 o'clock in various different writing sprints. So writing sprints is just you set yourself a timer and you write for as long as you can. I usually do 20-minute, 30-minute or 40-minute sprints, and you just write for all of that time. And then and you're not allowed to stop and edit it. You just write, and then you take a 10, 20-minute break, and then you do it again. And yeah, I mean, it works best when you can body double and you've got other people doing writing sprints at the same time to check that you're not just going on your phone partway through, but that's what's worked for me. And then obviously spite, crippling fear of failure, and negative self-talk, really helpful, terrible for your mental health, but great for getting books finished. If you tell yourself that if you didn't write today, you're a lazy piece of whatever, then you might write more the next day. And if someone's told you you'll never make it as a writer, that's also really helpful. So I would recommend getting someone in your life to tell you that it's pointless trying to be a writer, because it really works. So editing takes me 6 to 9 months, depending on the project, because I'm usually doing a first draft at the same time when I'm editing the next one, because to keep the books sort of coming out fairly regularly, I'm going back and forth between editing and writing most of the time. So the main steps that I do, I think there's 6 steps that I take when I'm editing. So initially, I'll just reread the whole book, and I'll leave comments through. Just use Google Docs. I know some people really like Scrivener, but I've never got on with the fancier ones. I just usually use Word document or Google Docs. But I'll reread the whole thing. I'll leave myself comments throughout the manuscript and sweep out the worst typos, and then I give that to. I have a very close friend that I've known since I was 12 years old who also writes books all the time. And he has saved my life so many times because we just swap. It's like a critique partner. So he gives me his books, I give him mine, and we do it for free. And then we just give each other advice. So having someone like that is really helpful. I have used a developmental editor a couple of times as well. Recently, I found one that I liked, but they can be really expensive. I used one for my first book for Pocket of Lies. Don't look in the acknowledgements because you'll find out who it is, but they weren't great. And I don't know if, so I haven't used them again because I just didn't get on with their style of editing, but like trying to find someone that you get along with in this process can take a while. But yes, so after I've done an initial sweep, I'll give it to my friends or a developmental editor. I give them a month or 6 weeks to read that, and in that time I'm usually either outlining or writing the next book. And then when they get it back to me, I will implement all the feedback that I agree with, which is usually 90% of it, to be honest. Most of what they tell me is correct, and there are plot holes everywhere, so I usually fix those things. And then I'll do a line edit myself to get it as clean as I can make it, and that becomes the third draft. And then I send it off to an editor if I'm using one, or I do another line edit myself. And then I might enlist some help again for continuity and smaller issues in the first book. I did not keep track of how much time passed whatsoever, and it's actually quite relevant to someone was cursed at one point, and like there was a specific amount of days that need to have passed, and it was a mess. So that's my biggest flaw, I think, with continuity is I don't keep track of how many days have passed in my books whatsoever. So that's really helpful to get other people to work out that you're in the complete wrong season. Continuity, smaller issues like that. So then I'll do another pass and implement any changes that they've picked up. And then I format it into its final format. And then it goes into a proofread. Then I implement all of those. And then that's done. So that's how many steps I take. Some people take more, some people take less. Maybe if I get more confident, I'll like cut out one of these steps. But at this point, I have 5 drafts that I do. So I've kind of talked a little bit about why I chose self-publishing, but I'll just go into a couple more of the pros and cons, because I still know that a lot of people don't really know that much about self-publishing. But yeah, so essentially self-publishing is when you use a platform such as Kindle Direct Publishing, that's Amazon's version, or Ingram Sparks have a way of distributing your books, or Drafter Digital. There's all these different service providers, but essentially you upload your book to them, and it's usually a print-on-demand feature. So if someone buys your book from some kind of book-selling retail marketplace, it will be printed by the company. They take a cut for printing it, and it just gets sent out directly through their channels. So if you bought my book on Amazon, it's not coming from me or a warehouse. They're printing it directly sort of to order for your book. So it's quite easy to do in that there's no gatekeeper. Anyone in this room tomorrow could set up an Amazon account and upload a Word document I think it has to be a minimum of 10 pages or something. You could put any 10-page Word document that's on your computer and you could upload it, and it's technically a book that people can buy on Amazon. The difficulty, as at least Will here will know, and maybe someone else, is getting anyone to know that book exists is the biggest problem with self-publishing, and you also have to fund all of it yourself. So obviously if you get a traditional publisher, what they'll do is they'll pay you the money, and also they'll pay you in advance that goes against the royalties that you make for them. But they also will pay you, they'll pay for all of the editing, they'll pay for your cover, they'll organize all of that. So this requires money up front that you might never see again. So that's one of the reasons why, that's one of the things that people get nervous about self-publishing. But there are pros and cons. Here are the pros of self-publishing. There are more than this, but these are the ones I thought of, the key ones, I guess. So you have control. So you pick when you want the book to come out. If you've just finished it and you can edit really quickly, you could get it out a couple months after finishing your first draft, if you're that quick. I know people who who publish a book every single month. And I don't think you'd be able to do that within traditional publishing because of how many books they can actually afford to market for you. So you can pick your cover designer, you've got full choice of agency over things that you want to change on your covers, which you don't necessarily have in traditional publishing. I've heard some stories of people that have sort of just been given covers they hate. You choose your editors, pros and cons to that. You get to choose the content and plot itself. Obviously, no one's going to tell you you need to change this about the content. You can also get a high percentage of royalties. So kind of what I was saying about that 20 books to 50K thing is once you've got enough titles out there, in theory, if you kind of just build your audience slowly over time, then it becomes a marathon. But at the end of the marathon, you get a much higher percentage of your royalties. You're getting 70% royalties on ebooks that you sell, whereas if you were through a publisher, you'd be more getting like 10 or 20%. But it's 70% of a probably smaller number, depending on how you do. So the maths can work out over the long run, but that is a pro in that you get more money per sale if you are in self-publishing. Cons of self-publishing, yeah, so you have all the control, but you also have all the control, which is not always a good thing, because no one else is invested in making your book succeed. You have to find editors, cover designers, people that you trust to work on it, and you have to wear all the hats. You have to learn how to be a writer, an editor, a design expert. Even if you're not doing the cover design yourself, you have to be able to be like, that font isn't good and doesn't look good. And if someone brings designs to you, you still have to be able to critique them. And that requires a certain level of skill and like design awareness that you wouldn't think to have just being a writer. And obviously you have to market the books pretty much entirely yourself. It's also expensive. It doesn't have to be. As I said, you could literally just put a Word document onto Amazon tomorrow and you're technically an author. But if you wanted to get a fancy illustrated cover or editors with years of experience, it can be thousands of pounds. I personally know multiple authors who have spent more than £5,000 publishing their debuts, and it's not even that crazy. But yes, I think in general my first book, Pocket of Lies, cost me about 2,000 or 3,000 because I got 2 editors. But one of my books only cost me £300. So it depends on how much you want to spend at each stage and how expensive the people you're using are. So yeah, I've already sort of mentioned this, but I chose to self-publish because I'm impatient. I like the idea of wearing all the hats. It's like a little project. I like being a project manager and doing everything. I knew I wanted to do it for quite a long time. So I think if I only had one book of my heart that I really wanted everyone to read, I might have spent longer in querying it to agents. But for me, I think I just wanted to start getting that backlist out there and seeing what I could do with it. But I'm definitely not opposed to traditional publishing, and if someone offers me lots of money, I'm going to take it. We'll see what happens. I do now have a literary agent, so it could happen. It hasn't happened yet, unfortunately. So yeah, because I'm allowed to talk about this, I haven't signed contracts. I haven't signed traditional. If you get a traditional publishing deal, they might be able to give you a ballpark of it's a nice deal, which means someone made like up to 50k, or it's a significant deal, which means someone made up to 250, I think is significant. But they can't actually tell you exactly how much money they made. So I'm going to tell you how much money I've made because I think it's interesting and I'm nosy about it. So the answer to this is kinda, but only in the last 2 months. So I'll show you. Right. So I have had 4,000 paid orders of my ebooks, paperbacks, and hardcovers. I've also had over 3 million Kindle Unlimited page reads. So if people don't know what that is, Kindle Unlimited page reads. So if you have an Amazon book reading subscription, it's called Kindle Unlimited. And if you sign up to that, I think it's £10 or £11 a month. And it basically means any books that are enrolled in Kindle Unlimited program, you can read for free. It's kind of like a streaming service. So like Spotify or like Apple Music. Once you're in, you just get all the ones that are in that program for free. So that accounts for 70% of my sales is people reading it through that basically book streaming service. So I get a very tiny amount of money per page read, and it stacks up. So my books are about, I don't know, on average of 500 to 600 pages on Kindle Unlimited. It's like they come up less on here, but they come up more. Anyway, for the sake of argument, let's say they're 500, 600 pages. So if you divide the 3 million, which is every single page read by someone on the streaming service, by 600, it comes to around 5,000 copies. So basically I've sold in the region of 9,000 copies of my books between the streaming way of reading it and the paid copies. I've also had an audiobook deal for the Amefyre trilogy, which is pretty modest and quite minor, but I'm putting it in there. I actually don't know how many of those have sold whatsoever. That's another thing with traditional publishing, in that was bought by a small company called Saga Egmont Press, and they bought the rights to publish those under their audiobook house. And I only find out the figures once a year, and that's in January. So I have no idea. It could be like 10. Who knows? So those are kind of like the overview of the actual books I've sold. Would anyone like to guess the worst month that I've had of sales since in the last 18 months? No? Okay. £212 was the worst month that I had, which was 2 months after publishing A Pocket of Lies. So I only had the one book out. So if we're going the 20 books to 50k, one book's not really going to cut it. And the best month I've had was last month, which was £3,600. This hasn't been, I would say, it hasn't been like a linear progression, I'll show you how it's gone. So this was in 2024. So you can see like the bar graph of like how much I made each month. It was somewhere in the region of 350 average pounds a month for 2024. So June 2024, the blue bar represents A Pocket of Lies sales, so the first book. And then where the yellow comes in, that's when the second book, A Promise of Blood, came out. And the red bar you see, it will disappear in the next one because it wasn't really super relevant. It's the novella that I wrote, which was about a side character from the Amefyre, A Pocket of Lies universe. It hasn't sold very much, and you'll see that you'll barely see it on the next one. So in my first 6 months of being a self-published author, I made like £2,500. At that point, I hadn't broken even, so it's good. This year, I've made about 13.5. In March 2025 is when I broke even. May 2025, the green bar, is when the third book. I think that, all of the things have changed now because the colours have changed. But anyway, the blue is now To Touch Silent Fury. And you can see how drastically the numbers changed when that came out. So I'd say in general, for 2025, before To Touch Silent Fury came out, I was making £600 or £700 a month on average. And then when that came out, I've been making closer to 2,000 to 3,500 a month. It's only been 3 months. So you can kind of see that this was when I did a big sale, but anytime I like publish a book, there's like this drop off. And that happened for the other ones as well. This hasn't happened for this one yet, and I don't know why, but I'm still expecting that at some point it will like swoosh down. But that's how much 9,000 copies equates to. It's kind of about £16,000. And I am kind of full-time now. I've just got a part-time job actually. So now now it's going really well. Now I have like 2 jobs. But until like a month ago, it was a struggle. So where does that leave me now? So yeah, I've just started a part-time job. It's 3 days a week. It's like 20 hours. I think I can pretty much maintain the speed that I'm at, which is sort of 1.5 to 2 books a year with that part-time job. Book 2 of To Touch Silent Fury is, if you imagine that like editing timeline, it's like halfway through that one, like step 4. It could come out in about 3 months, but I did recently just get an agent who is trying to sell To Touch Silent Fury to traditional publishers. Don't know if that's going to happen. Unclear. She's been trying to sell it to editors for about 6 weeks now. We'll see. Hasn't heard anything yet. If that happens, that'd be great for me. Loads of money. If it doesn't happen, I'll publish book 2 in about 4 months, and we'll just keep going. 20 books, 50k. You never know. And yeah, so I don't know when it will be actually. So the timeline for being an actual full-time author is hazy because technically in the last 3 months I've made enough that it would probably count as a full-time job, but it's so uncertain. And I do have some special editions of this book coming out, which will also help that. I've got like 3 special editions. So the way they work is they spend sort of 5-10k to make 500 copies of a very fancy book, and they pay me a small number of like a 10% of what they make in royalties from that. So I'll get some of those payments in soon as well. But I think it's interesting because I don't think you actually hear a lot about how much indie authors make. So that's how much I've made. Any questions?
What do you think made Silent Fury
do that?
Yeah.
I think the main reason was I had a video on TikTok that did very well when I was asking for ARC readers. So I don't know if you know what ARC readers are, but people that read the book in advance of it coming out. So it's advanced reader copies, and they read those before the book comes out, and they put a review on Goodreads or anywhere else that people review books. And I got 3,000 people, which is a huge number of people to sign up to read the book for free in advance of it coming out. And I think it was word of mouth from the 2,000 of those 3,000 that did read it, telling other people, oh, you should check out this book, it's good. I think that's 80% of it, and a bit of a snowball from those people telling people, because my marketing since the book has come out hasn't been fantastic. I haven't really had many videos do well since it came out. But that video got 100,000 views and 3,000 people to sign up. And I think it's kind of honestly just from that, I would say. Yeah.
Would you say TikTok is kind of essential for it in that sense?
Um,
One video as well.
I think you've got the most chance of going sort of viral, as it were. I think people on TikTok are more likely to buy based on a video than anyone I've seen anywhere else. Like the conversion to TikTok views to sales is a lot better than Reels or other views that I've seen to sales. But I think it depends on your audience. I'd say TikTok is vital if you are marketing to consumers that are under 35, 40, because they're on TikTok. But if you're trying to market a niche, like World War-based historical fiction, you might not find your audience on TikTok as much. You might find them somewhere else. So yeah, just follow where you think the people that read your book will be. Yeah.
I was going to ask as well, you've talked about trying to move away from a reliance on Amazon.
Yes. Oh, it's impossible. It's, yeah, it's 90% of, yeah. So with this book, with these ones, with Amefyre, they're only available on Amazon. With Touch Silent Fury, it is available through Waterstones Online, Barnes & Noble Online, and a couple of other online retailers. Sorry?
What's the difference? How come you've got another retailer?
So it just requires more work from me as the author. So initially, because I didn't want to have to sign up to loads of different dashboards and put it on loads of different systems because I was a bit overwhelmed by how many things there were to do the first time anyway. I just did the easy route and just did it through Kindle. If you don't do it just through Amazon, you have to buy your own ISBNs and you have to set yourself up on different systems. So, like the barcode at the back of the book, like Amazon will provide one for you if you just use them, and because you're exclusive with them. But if you want to have it on sale anywhere else, you have to purchase one, and they're not super cheap. And yeah, I kind of just didn't really know how it was going to go. But because I sort of had my head in the game and I knew what I was doing, then I decided with this one that I'd sell the paperback more broadly. The ebook is still only exclusive to Amazon because the only way you can get in that Kindle Unlimited, the streaming sort of reading service, they only let you in there if your ebook is exclusive to Amazon. And 70% of my readership or 70% of my royalties are from that service. So if I pulled my book out of Amazon, yeah, unfortunately, you can't avoid it. It's got a huge monopoly. Yeah.
So is it just sort of a case of getting the paperback where you can and doing special editions and things on top of the
Yeah, I think so. I think the situation is if you're traditionally published and your books are in bookstores, I think the royalties probably look quite different. But as a indie or self-pub author where you don't have access to bookstores, I don't think you can avoid Amazon. Really.
Would you recommend getting an ISBN?
Yeah. Yeah. I think it just gives you more options because if you get an ISBN yourself, then if someone wants to pick it up later or you want the flexibility at any time, you do own the rights to it. Whereas if you use them, it's basically like Amazon is your publisher. Whereas now sort of I'm my publisher, but I'm publishing through Amazon. Like you set up an account through ISBN. So this one's technically under Sandpiper Publishing. So you kind of have ownership of it rather than Amazon owning your book.
It feels a little bit like self-publishing is awesome and that you can control everything yourself. It's very like punk rock, but then you're publishing through a thing that is making it
so not punk rock.
So
yeah,
the exact opposite.
Yeah, 100% true. Yeah, it is really tricky. Yeah, but yeah, I think there isn't a viable alternative right now. I've seen people trying to make alternative book platforms, and they're popular amongst other authors, but if the readers aren't there and the readers are always just, it's totally fair, you're going to pick wherever the cheapest, easiest, most convenient thing is, and that's Amazon. So yeah,
I was just going to say, from a reader perspective, from a reader perspective, I would have come to books. I'm a young person, not on TikTok. I'm very anti social media in general.
Yeah.
So I came across your book by searching for romantasy.
Oh, that's fun.
Oh,
Yeah.
any romantic subplot.
Yeah.
I'm sold. I'm not certain number of stars and that. And so I searched, and yours came up, and I think it was a while back, so we didn't have as many reviews as you have now.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have come across it, but as a somebody who binge reads a lot, I read a lot of books.
Mm-hmm.
I know I'm problematic. I really like the Kindle option because, like, I wouldn't have bought the paperback without trying your backlog first.
No,
Like
that's so true.
I love them.
Yeah.
Which is why they say I just want to read a little bit more. Like, I feel like Amazon is a real selling point for me. I read so much very quality fiction. Is one of the things
yeah. Yeah, I think the Kindle, exactly what you're saying with the trust thing. Kindle Unlimited allows people just to try the book for free, rather than having to spend £3 on the ebook, or way more because indie books are expensive to buy. Yeah, so it allows you to give that option to see if you like it through Kindle Unlimited, and if you don't have that option, then you might never have read the book. And yeah, no, if you like it, then you can buy it permanently. But yeah, I think because I don't have that level of trust, I don't have the big name of I can't just sell a book from a name. So you've got to. It's a way of people being able to try before they buy, I suppose. Yeah.
Which is helpful for self-publishing, I guess, because as you say, there's so much self-published stuff.
Yes. Yeah, because it's so easy to do. Yeah, and because you have to wear all the hats, you might think you've actually done a fantastic job, and it turns out you haven't, but you didn't know until you published it. But yeah.
Can I ask, your TikTok channel is brilliant in how sort of open you are about everything.
Yeah.
Were there authors that you looked at when you were thinking about publishing for the first time, self-publishing, and sort of modeled your approach on marketing or timeline of releasing?
Yeah. I don't know about timeline of release. I read so many articles by so many different authors that I wouldn't be able to remember who said each one. There's but I'd really recommend as a resource just the self-publishing area of Reddit is fantastic as a resource. So every question ever has been answered there, and there are so many people with so much information. My approach on my TikTok, I'd watched a couple, not really other TikTokers, because I'm sure there are other ones that do it, but I do put out videos every single month where I talk about how much sales and money I've made that month, which is part of the reason I put it on here. It's like, if I'm going to put it in public forums anyway, I may as well just tell everyone. But I talk about how much money I make very openly on my TikTok channel, and I also do some guidelines like how to self-publish and what I would do if I was starting out self-publishing. And I don't think my approach to marketing has been an intentional thing. The openness is intentional, the transparency is intentional, just because I didn't see a lot of it when I'm always the nosy one that's like, yeah, but how much money are you making? Like, so I've decided to just do that myself. But yeah, no, there's someone called Sarah Cannon on YouTube who does great videos. She sells a course, but you don't need to pay for the course. You can just watch her videos. She's great. And someone called Alexa Dunn, also on YouTube, who I watched loads of their videos. They do a lot of, I think they're both hybrid authors, so they've done some traditionally published books with publishing houses, and they've self-published them. So they have quite a lot of insight about industries. So I watched a lot of people that were saying a lot of helpful stuff, and I partly wanted to do the helpful stuff, but for my actual marketing videos, if I see someone else that's done a cool marketing video, I'll just copy it. I don't have a very original. It's a very scattergun approach to marketing. It's all over the place.
It's really helpful to hear from you, because you've done it all in the last year and a half, which is crazy.
Yeah.
There's loads of resources out there for self-publishing. There's a great podcast Stream Authors.
Okay, yeah, I haven't listened to that one.
It's really good, but all the people on there got big in like 2012 or something, when there was basically a Kindle gold rush and you put stuff on, and do really well just because everybody wanted to read stuff.
Yeah, there wasn't as much content on Kindle back then. I don't want to be like, oh, it's easier back in the day, but it does kind of seem like it was a bit easier. Yeah, I think that's a combination of AI getting to the point where it can generate books a lot easier. So you've got quite a lot of AI generated books coming onto the market, and that's sort of flooding it a little bit. and you've also got a lot of people that wrote a book during COVID, and now people that are working from home more and have more time, and there's just loads more books coming out. And people realizing that self-publishing is a genuine option and not like a fad. I think it's, the increase of books on Kindle every day is crazy.
I don't think many readers care that much anymore who the publisher is, because if you do it right, then like your books look like they're published by anyone else.
Oh, thank you. That's very kind of you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
As professional and as like well put together as anything else you pick up. I've always done this.
Cheers, thank you. Yeah, I think that's half the game, is trying to get your books to blend in as well as you can. Just play the game of, you don't know I'm self-published. It's fine. Yeah.
I asked about your creative process, where you've gone and where you found the inspiration.
You can, yes. My creative process. I don't have a good answer to this question. I do a lot of my best thinking and plot working out on transport. I come up with most of the solutions to my plot holes and also the plots themselves on the train. There was one today that I was thinking that I wanted to add in someone that had a character quirk where they only there was a guy on the train that was complaining that he was having to sit against the direction of travel and he was going to feel sick. I thought it'd be fun to make a character in my current book where they have to sit in the carriage facing forwards, otherwise they're going to feel ill. And you just come across weird little things in real life. But so I'm a bit of a plotter, so I don't do the discovery writing quite so much of where you sort of sit down with a sort of basic idea and you just sort of let it come out of you. I do tend to plan my books quite rigidly in a way of I'll write. So when I'm coming up with that, I'm in a creative state, and when I'm writing it, I'm kind of just following my outline. I don't know. I think I approach it quite analytically, and it's quite difficult to think about where the ideas and the inspiration really come from. I'm not sure how to answer that question. Sorry. Yes.
Thank you for the presentation.
Mm-hmm.
I'll return back to social media.
Yeah, go for it.
So TikTok is your main social media platform.
Yes. Yeah.
And how much of that is organic systems?
It's almost entirely organic. I've never paid TikTok. I've never done any paid promotion through TikTok. I have 21,000 followers on TikTok, but I think it doesn't necessarily translate as much as it does on other platforms to views. I don't get 20,000 views on most of my videos. The main area that I've got my followers from is from when I talk about being a writer and the money I've made and the transparency and tips on how to self-publish. So most of the people that follow me are there as other writers rather than readers. So that sometimes is challenging when I'm trying to swap my content between sort of helpful to other writers content and buy my book content, because they're not really necessarily the same audiences. So elements of that is helpful and elements that's not helpful. But yes, it is organic, but it's not necessarily organic all reader space. Yes, yeah.
Kind of touched on that a little. Use that in the process of character. Use inspiration.
Mm-hmm. I'm quite anti-AI. I understand why people need to use sort of the assistive AI. I totally understand. So I know some people that use Grammarly and ProWriting Aid to pick up on sort of echoes in their writing. So when you've used the same word loads of times on the same page, or to help you correct things. But I don't generate anything with AI at all. I think there are quite a lot of horror stories where authors have been picked up on doing that, where they've left an AI prompt within the text itself. Can you edit this to make it sound more like this author? And they've left the prompt in the text itself. And also when you get into the area of generating images with AI, a lot it's still at the point where it's very noticeable, and there's a lot of readers and writers that really dislike when people have AI generated imagery. So I just avoid it completely. I don't use it for anything. I could see people using it for inspiration, or like to give maybe like a character to give them a visual of a character for them to then describe. I think when you start actually putting it into the book and putting it into the actual content and putting it on the cover or using it to actually promote your book, it's not great. I'm against it personally, but that's my stance on it. Yeah.
Not the sort of thing like rate and trust you're trying to build as an
I think definitely if you use it for the writing content, yes, because then people just sort of don't believe that you've written it yourself. With covers, I think it's a little bit hazier. I think some people really do mind and some people don't mind. But I think writers and artists end up working quite closely together a lot of the time, because you do end up being in the same sort of creative spheres and you're hiring them for various things. So to then artists really won't like if you're using AI images. But yeah, I have a clause in all of my books saying I haven't used AI in any step of the process, and I also make sure it's in all of my special edition contracts that they don't use AI for any of the image creation, just because I've seen people lose credibility completely and people hating on authors for finding out that they used AI imagery. So yeah, I steer clear of it. Yes, I saw that like controversy about the special edition. Yeah, because people have been waiting years for it, and they're pretty convinced it was AI. Yeah, it's not great.
How do you feel about the sort of romanticy tag? It's, when I first read Pocket of Lies, it was sort of sold as a romanticy sort of thing, recommended in a romanticy sort of vein, and then you read it and it is as you said, it's very much more like Mistborn, a lot like The Lies of Buck and Mora and that sort of thing, which really bleak and dark, and she's a horrible time.
She has a bad time.
Yeah. Are you happy with that, or are you just sort of using it as you just sort of like you have to do that as a means to end kind of thing, or does it burn with when people call it romantic? No. It doesn't at all bother me that people call my books romantasy, because I often call them romantasy myself. But that's largely because, so this book, Pocket of Lies, is not a romantasy, but the second book and the third book are more romantic. And there's a certain level to which, because I know book two is more of a conventional romantasy, in that the romantic plotline goes from being basically 5%, like 4 pages of this book, to being about 30 or 40%. And if someone went into it thinking it was not romantic at all, and it's just a classic dark fantasy in the vein of Mistborn, and they get to book 2 and they're like, "Ooh, this has got really romantic all of a sudden," I'd probably rather have the romantasy reader be like, "This isn't romantic enough," and then being like, "Oh, here it is," than having dark fantasy readers get like jump scared by a kissing scene. So I've played it that way, and I think in general, I know I'm always going to be writing books that have a certain level of romance in them. So branding myself as a romantasy author makes more sense than maybe necessarily aligning myself with just quite straight classic male fantasy, as it were. But I feel it is a bit weird, because I think men who write fantasy with romantic subplots, their books are just called fantasy, and women who write fantasy books with romantic plot lines, their books are called like fairy porn and romantasy. Because I'd say that one has the same level of romance as maybe Never Nights, which is like J. Kristoff book, and maybe Name of the Wind, Patrick Rothfuss, where there's just like there is something there, but it's not overriding the plot. But also, if I'm marketing on TikTok, a lot of people on TikTok really like romantasy, so it's sort of like it's the devil I know, and I'm happy to be. I like romance. I actually usually set out to write my books with more romance than ends up getting into the final version, and then I just get distracted by the plot. So it's my fault. I kind of wanted to be a romantasy author, and I keep getting distracted. Yeah.
Can't be Silent Fury in the romantasy genre.
I would say it's a lot closer. I would say this one's 70% fantasy, 30% romance. I think technically romantasy is supposed to be as close to 50-50 as you can get it. Romantic fantasy would be fantasy that is romantic, which is probably closer to what these books are. Romantasy 50-50 and fantasy romance, like whichever one comes second is the one that's most important. This is still a romantic fantasy, but it's definitely more romantic. This one's definitely more romantic as a first book, as an intro to a world, than that one is. Yes.
So how do you sort of like, when you were writing Pocket of Lies?
Yeah.
How do you kind of, because it's such a long process to write that first novel,
Yeah.
not your first one.
Mm.
How do you sort of going?
Oh, you can't think about it.
Just
Can't think about it. Just think about the thing that you need to do this time. You're like, okay, I need to write one more chapter. I need to write one more chapter. If you start being like, okay, well, when I finish this, I've got 7 more months of editing. You'll never finish it. Actually, just like can't think about the rest of the process. Just the current step that you're on. It's like the only part you can think about. Otherwise,
It's a weird, like you can like trick yourself because you've got to be confident enough to think, right, this is going to come out. It's going to be brilliant. And then once you've finished the first draft, you've got to be critical enough to then go back and trash everything you've written.
Yes, I think that's one of the hardest parts is the going between needing to take the internal critic out of your head to get the first draft done and then reinstalling it again to be like, oh, everything I wrote is terrible. That's really tricky. And then when you have to swap again to doing a first draft again when you finished editing that round, that's swapping those brain modes is very, very difficult. Yeah.
Do you plan the full series in advance before you've written? Did you plan books 1, 2, and 3?
I planned some major story beats, but not the whole thing. So I planned the first book, and I planned something I thought might happen at the middle of the second book, how the second book would end, something I thought would happen at the middle of the third book, how the third book would end. And the third book's ending did change sometime in book 2. But yeah, I mean, I planned it just so I knew what the big bad was that they were working towards and what the medium bads were that they'd fight at the end of the first one and the end of the second one, for example. But not super in depth. No, yeah.
Things change quite drastically through writing.
Yeah. Things in the middle of book 2, I completely changed what I thought was going to happen in book 3. At least I knew basically there's 2 big bosses really at the end of Pocket of Lies, and the second one I didn't think was going to be a boss until halfway through the second book. So the first boss remained. The first big ending that I thought was going to be the big ending stayed, but then I just added the second big ending, which wasn't supposed to be in there. But because that character had existed, it seemed like I'd foreshadowed it enough, so it was fine. I think that's the big problem that you have when you come back to change something in later books, is that you haven't actually foreshadowed it at all. And I think that's kind of why I like trying to stay 1 book ahead. So I try to have the first draft of the next one written by the time the first one comes out, because then I've worked out what I might need to just quickly add into the previous one to make it seem like an Easter egg. The whole time it was planned, I promise. Yeah.
Did you find yourself adjusting what was going to happen based on feedback you were getting from readers?
I tried not to, but I have done that with this one, because a number of people in the reviews, I was probably 70% through writing the first draft of the second book when this one came out, and my early arc reviews had started to come in, and a number of people said they wanted a character to return. I hadn't plotted that character to return. And that character wasn't in the same place as them. So it's a bit of I had to change where they travelled to at a point in book 2 to give the fan service of the character coming back. But that was the only element that changed. I just changed the location of where something happened. Yeah.
Go on. So for your next sort of couple of years, what's your plan for releases? Because you said you're quite not far off book 2 and what are the sort of plans that you've got, if you're able to tell us?
Yeah, I'm 1/3 of the way through a first draft of a romantasy murder mystery, which is fun. See how that one goes. So I'm 1/3 of the way into the draft of that. I've kind of abandoned it because I've hit a stumbling block, and a new shiny idea has come in. And I try not to listen to that and just get to the end of the book that I'm currently working on. But I think this book has a slight snag in that I've got the A plot, but I'm missing a B plot. So when they're not directly working on the murder mystery plotline, they're kind of not doing anything. So I need to decide what the characters are doing when they're not solving the murder, and I haven't worked out what that is yet. So I've sort of let that breathe for a week or two, and I've started outlining a different book, which is just like the darkest book I've outlined yet. So I don't know whether that will even like see the light of day. It might be too dark, but yeah, it's sort of based around. It's like super early stages, but it's based in an academy, a Slayer academy, monster slaying one. And a siren joins that academy because she thinks it's the easiest place to hide, because no one would think a monster would join the monster hunting academy. But she's got a very dark history and early stages. I don't know whether So basically, this book 2 of this should come out in the middle of 2026. Maybe later if a traditional publisher wants to buy it, because that's just going to change the timelines and everything. Maybe earlier if they definitely don't, but that would come out in 26. I want to have a second release in 2026, which will either be this one I'm a third of the way through, or the one I'm just starting. So I'm trying to have a new book, first draft done by the end of March. One of those 2 projects that will hopefully come out in September, October time. And I haven't really planned beyond that, because I haven't decided if those are going to be a series or a standalone. Yeah, I haven't got a 5-year plan. I've kind of just got the next 1-ish years. We'll see how it goes. Yeah.
Would you go into any other genres, or are you just mainly going to stick to sort of fantasy, romancy?
I am interested in writing horror, but I'm going to be... I do still have a few ideas, obviously, that are fantasy romance, or romantic fantasy, or however we want to define them. So I'm going to get those ideas out of my head, because I kind of also think it's sensible to sort of stay in the lane a little bit at the start and build a rep in an area. And then if I feel like I have the freedom to work on something which might be terrible because I haven't written it before, yeah, I might try a horror. It will be a romantic horror though, obviously. I can't not have a romantic plotline. Yeah, I think that's the only other one that I feel qualified to write. I don't think I have enough life experience to write literary fiction or women's fiction or contemporary fiction. I feel like that requires more grounding on like planet Earth. I'm just living in like fantasy worlds, so yeah.
You sort of give yourself set publication dates. So when you're releasing book 1, you like, right, book 2 is coming June, or that sort of thing.
I tell myself those to force myself to have a deadline. Yeah, well, I sort of told readers that book 2 was going to come out in March, April, but then 2 weeks later I got approached by this agent, so I'm not sure whether that's going to be true anymore. But I try not to give a date unless I know I can stick with it. But I set one in my head before it gets anywhere, because it's just, I won't finish anything if I don't give myself a deadline. But yeah, no, I don't tend to put it publicly, because so much can change. It always takes at least add like 2 months to whatever time you think it's going to come out. It won't, for whatever reason. Yeah.
Got a new reader who's not heard you before, I suppose. Book 1 and announced that book 2 is coming in June, and then it doesn't. That's immediate disappointment. Like, oh,
yes.
Got another. So that's
Doors of Stone, so sad. It'll never come out. Yes. Yeah. Okay. Well, I mean, you've got a long time to become Patrick Rothfuss. What have you been waiting for that? Like 15 years?
Yeah,
So I think as long as you do it within like 3 years, you're probably fine. Yeah. Just don't have to hold yourself to Patrick Rothfuss standards. Yeah.
Did the agent approach you, if you don't mind me asking?
Yes. Yeah. No, she just sent me an email out of the blue saying, I'd like to have a chat. I've read that book. Do you want to talk about it? Still don't know if it will come to anything, but I think the idea is she's going to try and sell this one, and if not, I'll pitch her my other ideas and see if she wants to try and sell those ones. Yeah, we'll see how it goes. I'm a little bit nervous. I think the only thing I'm actually nervous about with that is I don't want it to mean that the second book doesn't come out for 1.5 years.
Right.
So that's my one like stick in the mud point. Like, I wouldn't accept a traditional deal if they tell me it's going to take 1.5 years or 2 years, because there's already a readership for this one, and I don't want to disappoint them.
Presumably you're writing for as wide a readership as possible.
Yeah, I guess so.
Do you ever feel, I'm assuming that, do you ever feel that perhaps romance doesn't appeal to men?
Oh yeah, no, I know it doesn't. Yeah.
So you're basically cutting half your
Well,
demographic.
yes. So it's a good point, definitely. And if someone hears the phrase like romantasy or romantic fantasy, they'll be like, "Oh, don't want to read a kissing book," you know. But it's not really half the demographic, because something like 70 or 80% of books are read by women. Yeah.
That's true.
So if you look at the stats of how many books women read a year compared to how many books men read a year, obviously there are some exceptions. We've got men in the room today, but yeah, it's not to sort of not appeal to men. It's not cutting out 50%. You're cutting out maybe 25% of actual consistent readers. Women read more voraciously. Romance is the best-selling. I think crime in the UK is best-selling, and then romance. But I kind of am sort of okay. I have had quite a lot of men that have read my book and enjoyed it, that have got over the romantasy tag. But yeah, I think if someone doesn't want to read the book because they know there's romantic plotline, then that's fine, because they just know that I don't want to missell it at the same time. I don't want to be like, oh, it's got no romance in it, and then men pick it up and think that's kind of lied to me. So yeah, I sort of don't mind if someone doesn't want to pick it up for that reason. But yeah, I also don't think it's half the population, really.
Our library Facebook, 20% of our Facebook followers in it. Translates. I was going to ask about maps in your books.
Maps. Oh, thank you.
How did you design them, and did you design them yourself?
Yes. Thank you. I use this program called Incarnate. I think so I play Dungeons and Dragons as well, because I'm just a giant nerd, basically. But it's the map building. It's a map software we use for our Dungeons and Dragons maps when we make them, and a lot of people use it for books as well, and a lot of people use it for book maps. So I was already sort of semi-handy with that, and I just spent. I probably would have better used my time to pay someone, because it probably did take like 10 hours to make each of these maps. But it's really helpful as an exercise. It's actually one of the earliest things I do is I do a draft map. It's not very good. It's just like very bare bones map, and I make it look nice before I actually put it in the book. But knowing where places are makes the writing process way quicker, even if it's like a scribble in a book, because it's really annoying later down the line in the second or third continuity bit, when you've worked out all of the times that it takes people to travel around your entire map don't make sense at all. So having it there from the start, naming some of the places, makes you start to feel at home in the world, and then you make it actually look nice towards the end. But yes, I use Incarnate, and I would recommend it. And I don't even pay for it, because I use my friends' subscriptions.
Do you have like sort of story bibles and world bibles and things? Because one of the things that grabbed me, especially when I first read Pocket Wise, is within 5-10 pages, there's the sense of a massive world with all the history behind it. Is that something that you sort of build up the world before you start writing the book, or do you discover a bit as you go?
Yeah, I'm really terrible and analog with that. It's one of my biggest problems. I've been asked so many times to put a glossary of names of the characters in Touchstone Fury, because there's so many characters in that book. I don't have one. I just sort of remember their names. Sometimes I write them down. I have a notepad where I have names of people written down. Sometimes I lose that notebook, and I just say. So I have to Touch the Silent Fury, I have one page for one page in a notebook for each of the lands, who runs them, and any notable names, but I only have about 4 names down on each page. I haven't written anyone else's names down. I have to control F people's names, because I don't remember what I've called them either. No, it's really bad. I should have a world Bible for both of these books. I don't have it. It's mostly in my head. I'm glad. I think that's editors telling me that I was really inconsistent with something in the previous book. But yes, no, I don't have one.
In a Pocket of Lies,
Yes.
start each chapter with the memory of
Yes.
the writings. I didn't understand how that linked together. I missed the whole reasoning behind
Yes.
each chapter started with
Yeah, so yeah, in all three books of A Pocket of Lies, A Promise of Blood, and A Claiming of Souls, there's someone, there's sort of diary entries from like an unknown person at the start of each of the chapters. They do come together and they do have a meaning. It's kind of a spoiler to tell you who wrote them and what happened, but I can tell you afterwards, maybe, just in case someone wants to read it and I'm like, it was this person the whole time. But yes, I can tell you afterwards when I remember what the first one was about. Yeah.
With the audiobooks, do you feel like they were worth doing in sort of a business sense? I listened to the Pocket of Lies one day. Brilliant. Participate.
Yeah.
But in a sort of business sense, really, recommend going down that route.
I honestly don't know, because I haven't seen the sales data. I don't know whether it was worth it. I got paid very little, but you don't tend to get paid very much as an indie author to get the audiobooks produced, because they're basically paying you, so you don't have to pay it for yourself. It's tricky with the business case for audiobooks, because if I was to do it myself, with those ones it would be easier because it's all sort of told from one third-person perspective. With this one, it's dual POV, so I'd want to pay for two narrators. That would be even more expensive. It would probably, so Helen Keeley, who narrated Pocket of Lies and those books, she's quite a well-known narrator. So if I wanted to pay her myself, I don't know how much she would have charged, like thousands. Like I think probably in the range of 2,000 to 5,000 per book. So they obviously took that cost on, probably less because they are an established company and, you know, maybe they can provide her regular work. I don't know how their contracts work. But if I wanted to get good quality audiobooks, I would expect it to cost me, if I wanted to pay someone that was well known, a couple thousand per book. You can, with lesser known audiobook narrators, do like a royalty share thing where you don't pay them any money up front, but they just take a cut of all of the audiobook sales. So there are a number of narrators that are sort of up and coming that are willing to do that, and some of those are really good. I think if you're going to do if you think you're always going to be a long-term indie self-published author and you have the money, probably try to do it yourself, because maybe in the long term, over sort of 5 to 10 years, you make the investment back and then all that money is just yours and you're not getting sort of 10% of net royalties or whatever. I didn't have the money at the time because I was unemployed. So when they offered to make them for me, I said yes. But if you had the money to do it yourself, probably do it yourself.
They are brilliant.
Yes, I think also because I don't listen to audiobooks. I think I've got some kind of I can't listen to podcasts or audiobooks. It's really bad. I don't know. As soon as I listen to them, I can't pay attention to anything else I'm doing. So I knew I wouldn't really have the right kind of brain to listen to all of them and make corrections, because I think that's what you have to do. If you do it yourself, you basically become the audiobook producer. So the narrator would send you in chapters, you make corrections, and I don't listen to them, so I wouldn't even know what to correct. So for that format, it made sense for me personally to accept that offer. But yeah, I guess it depends on your personal situation. Yeah.
What do you like reading?
What I like reading? Good question. A bit of everything, but mostly fantasy. I think you tend to gravitate towards the genre that you write. I think so. I've read 25 books this year, which is good to some and bad to others. But I think like something like 17 or 18 of those would be fantasy books. A mixture of classic fantasy and romantasy books. I do enjoy a romantasy book. Read a couple of straight romances. Right now I'm trying to read Wuthering Heights, trying to be good and read a couple of classics every year. And also because the new film's coming out next year and I want to have a book accurate opinion on the film. I haven't read the book yet. Yeah. Yeah, mostly fantasy. I took part in this thing called Sphinx at the start of in January, which was a speculative fiction indie novella competition, and I was a judge. So I read like 10 fantasy novellas for that. So some were fantasy, some were sci-fi, some were speculative fiction. But yeah, so kind of widely, but within the niche of fantasy, I suppose. How about you? Fantasy and romantasy, yeah. That is impressive. I don't know, I think if you're teaching English, then some of the time you might be like burnt out of books.
Like, what are you reading? I'm like, that's appropriate for you.
I can't tell you, yeah. Nice.
And I was just going to ask one more thing. It's brilliant that you've put out so many books and that sort of thing. There's so much writing advice out there. It's like a whole industry.
Yeah.
What were some of the things some of the strategies that you heard about that maybe didn't work as well, or some of the things that didn't seem as important as you were hearing, or like articles and that sort of thing? And were there some things that you were surprised were quite important things that you had to get right that aren't talked about?
Yeah. I think there's this one piece of advice. I can't remember who said it now, but writing is rewriting. I don't necessarily agree with that. I would say this is potentially controversial, but 60 or 70% of what I write in my first draft ends up in the final draft. I know people whose opinions on drafting is it's quite common actually for people to write a first draft and basically sort of mostly scrap that and start again, or only take very small pieces from it, and completely basically second draft is kind of starting from the start again and only taking the parts of the first draft they've really liked and rewriting it from scratch. I'm not a from scratch rewriter. I don't think you have to write a good book. I don't think it's necessary. Yeah, and one thing that has really worked for me in terms of writing advice is I start off with like a dialogue framework. So when you've got a blank page, it's a bit stressful to immediately go into a scene setup. I find I don't always necessarily want to just like ground myself in the scene, because it's like I'm still getting my head around what the scene's going to be. So what I tend to do, the way I tend to write, is I will just write the dialogue for the scene. Not even speech tags, nothing, literally just this, like words of like people having a conversation. I'll leave gaps when I think there would be a pause, but just like an enter, and that's it. And I just do that, and it's sort of 400 words, and then I write the whole scene or chapter around that and fill in all the gaps. Kind of like a screenplay, I suppose, or like writing a play. I also think it makes the dialogue flow a lot more naturally, because when you write someone's piece of dialogue and then you write a whole chapter about what they look like and how they said it and how the other person reacts, sometimes you kind of lost the thread of a natural rhythm of conversation. So that's something that's really worked for me, that I saw in a like rapid writing technique, where people that write a ridiculous amount of words a day, like 5,000 to 10,000 words a day, crazy people, they use this rapid writing technique, which starts with dialogue, and that does actually work for me. Yeah.
Do you guys have any questions at all? Okay. Thank you so much. That was honestly brilliant.
I'm glad it was helpful. Thanks for coming, everyone.